Hello everybody, my name is Ratnos, and welcome to This Week in Mythic Plus. This week's affixes are Sanguine, Grievous, Fortified, and of course Prideful. This is a bit of a misleading week, I'd say, because these affixes can actually be pretty rough. So even though it's Fortified, I would say this is one of the weeks that is pretty difficult for high key purposes, especially with the Prideful affix. The interaction between Prideful and Grievous can be really nasty, especially for healers that are having mana issues of any kind. It's one of the big things that I think locks out a lot of specs from high keys this season has been just the brutal challenge of healing a Pride after you just healed a hard pull. And Grievous really piles on there. Sanguine is something that, when managed well, particularly that's largely on the tank, it can be minimized in a lot of cases. Although in Shadowlands in particular, there are quite a few spots and quite a few dungeons where you will run into a problem with Sanguine if you didn't think about it beforehand. There are a lot of pulls that are kind of standard that you should still do them this week, but you should have a plan for how Sanguine is going to be handled. Really strong effects, of course, to have in your group are any kind of displacement effect. So we're looking at stuff like Ring of Peace, Typhoon, Thunderstorm, Shining Force, any of that kind of stuff is really valuable if used well this week. And you have to be careful on the flip side with stuff like slows as packs are dying. Things like Frost Mages. I mean, slows I think are still good this week, but you have to play it a little bit differently if you have something like permanent slow on all the mobs. And if you have a non-permanent slow button, be careful using it as the pack is dying. It's not like you can't use it, but sometimes you can accidentally get mobs, slowed in Sanguine, and you got to be really careful with stuns as stuff is dying. A little bit less of a problem than it was last expansion because Outlaw doesn't have that rotational stun. I don't know if you guys remember last expansion, though, the between the eyes 6-second stun on the mob in Sanguine was a pretty common mainstay of Mythic Plus, at least when I was playing Outlaw Rogue. I did that all the time. Okay, so in this video, I'm not going to go over every single dungeon, although if you're interested, 12 weeks ago I did a video that did just that. But I do want to talk about some specific dungeons, some specific pulls, and some specific dungeons. I want to start off actually with Necrotic Wake, because apparently there was a Reddit post about this pull being included in my routes here. This pull is really good. Honestly, the amount of count that you got from this guy is really strong, but the thing you need to know if you're going to do this pull is the easiest way to make it work. There's a lot of kicks here. By default, but there's an anima orb that spawns over here. Your tank should grab this and use it on this pull. That's something that I think just doing that every week is a really good baseline to be at. Getting a Pride into that pull, something that my route here does, and would recommend it as well. The tank should have the orb, or somebody with a misdirection effect can pick it up as well, but you really want that threat to go on the tank as well with that, otherwise they will one-shot whoever's using the orb, and then everything will go bad. But the orb has this side effect of interrupting and silencing stuff that it hits, so that usually means these things die before they actually get a cast. By the time this thing is casting, it's the only one left, and easy to land interrupts on. In fact, if you're doing this key at a level where the timer is getting in your way, I would encourage you to have your tank invis pot, sneak ahead and grab these two guys and pull them back onto this pull. That's something I did, my group did in this key, and I think it's really clever, because these guys are also great when you silence them. You got to watch out for their frontal as they're getting into this pack, but really makes short work of it, and you got even more count basically for free on that orb use. So that's just a little thing there that I got a couple questions about, so figured I'd answer, and there in the note as well if you want the explanation of how to do that. Okay, let's talk about some of the spots that are going to be tough for Sanguine in particular. So one thing I want to highlight is anytime you're using a dungeon-based stun effect, that is something that can go very wrong with Sanguine. So something like Inspires of Ascension, if you're going to use a spear on this pull, which I think is a great idea, I do this, I recommend it. If you have a Kyrian player in your group, pulling all 9 of these enemies, hitting them with a spear, AoEing them down. The upside of this strategy is that a lot of stuff can die really quick. The downside of this strategy on Sanguine Week is that a lot of stuff can die really quick and put Sanguine puddles underneath these 3 big mobs. So the strategy is still good if you have a way to displace those mobs, or if they're not they're not actually going to die in the 10 seconds, but like right after the 10 seconds. So something like a Ring of Peace as these are dying to knock them so that they don't drop the Sanguine under anything. You can even Ring of Peace after they died, just you can't Ring of Peace the Goliath. So You just have to be careful of that. Make sure that the Goliath is not getting any Sanguine underneath it. Worst case, if 3 mobs, if the Goliath heals to full and these other 2 don't, it's not the end of the world. It's still faster than pulling these packs separately. You're still getting good effective damage on these. So even then, I would still recommend, even if that was guaranteed to happen, I would still say this is better than not doing it. And then you also have dungeon-based stuns like in the other side, urn pulls. These are usually a little bit less likely for everything to die within the urn window, but one urn that can cause you problems is the Ardenweld one in particular. So if you're using this urn, that's something that you want to really make sure you do it right at the start of the pull, and don't, if you have it's rare, but if somehow a hatchling has joined your adventure there, those die nice and fast. But there shouldn't be a... you kill them off first and then move the rest of the pack, but just don't pull any hatchlings into this pull. Just don't pull any hatchlings that you don't have to anyways. This is the only hatchling I would basically ever pull on purpose, unless you're doing a big pull in this area, and then you're AoE stunning these ones. You always need to stun the hatchlings, though. This is a 3.5 second Frightened Cries cast. Can't be interrupted. Needs to be stunned, or else you're going to pull all the matriarchs within a 50 million yard radius. So this one, if it casts here, it's going to pull this matriarch, as well as this one. So you want to avoid that if you can. Okay, those were the pulls I had some specific tips for. I don't really have anything for you in any of these other dungeons. Kind of the same stuff holds true. I guess the one thing I would say is make sure you have respect for bosses. Even though it's a Fortified week, there are a lot of bosses that are tough with just Grievous as an operative affix on them, especially ones that have heavy tank and AoE based damage. So something like really every boss in Plaguefall, but the second last one in particular, and the last one as well, can be really, really nasty. So proactively using stuff like health pots to get yourself out of Grievous range as a DPS player, using your defensives before you're at 20% health is going to really help your healer out, especially if your tank is getting beaten up here, which they often are on this fight. This fight does not mess around with tanks. Okay, that's a look at some of these dungeons. Hope it helped. Hope you found it interesting. Do let me know what you think in the comments and stuff. Check out my Twitch stream, twitch.tv/Ratnos. And this weekend, there's another M+ event. It's complexity limit pro-am tournament. So it's two pro players, 1 influencer, and 2 amateurs on each team. And there's 8 teams, and they're going to do some kind of M+ tournament. And the pros, I think, are largely playing off specs as well, so it should be pretty fun to watch. So come check that out if you're interested in some M+ content this weekend. I'll be casting that one, although if you see this video in the first 3 hours after it came out, I think the announcement hasn't come out yet. So, but yeah, that's what's happening this weekend. Anyways, I'm gonna get out of here. Thanks everybody for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.